characters, and I really did think, he's not well spoken, or he's not spoken very hard, like much of. Yes, not so famous indeed. But his story is amazing. So let's dig in together. Can I be annoying and ask you guys to move up? Sorry. So just to be clear, the centurion soldier that we're talking about, because there's more than one centurion soldier just referred to, it's from Luke chapter 7, and we'll read it together in a little bit, but just in brief summary, the centurion soldier we're talking about is the one who sends a delegation out to Christ. He sends a delegation out to Christ and tells him, my servant is sick. So he sends out a few people and he goes and says, go and see Jesus and tell him my servant is sick, and plead to him and beg to Jesus to save my servant who's dying. So Christ, he hears the pleas and he says to them, yeah, sure, I'll be on my way. And then as he's coming, and the centurion soldier hears that Jesus is coming to heal his servant, he says, whoa, that's too much. That's more than I asked for. I said just heal him. Don't come. So he sends some friends, and he meets Jesus, and the friends meet Jesus along the way as he's approaching, and they say to him, and he sends these friends out to tell Jesus, no, it's enough, just say the words and he'll be healed. You don't have to come all the way. And the reason why he didn't go himself is revealed, and because he says to him, only say the words and my servant will be healed. And that rings a bell to us, because that is in the prayer that we say before communion, and it says, I'm unworthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the words, your sins are forgiven, and my soul will be healed. And so, in short, that's the centurion soldier that we're talking about today. But when we read on in the Gospels, we see healing after healing after healing, and maybe that's one of the reasons why this particular centurion soldier is looked over, because we see so many healings that we're like, okay, yep. Next one. So, for example, can I be annoying and try and make it interactive and ask you guys, can you just give us some examples and just shout it out? There's heaps. Examples of healing miracles in the Gospels. The blind man, yep. The paralyzed man, the one who came through the roof. Okay, so my one is the one who came down through the roof. Sorry? Anything else? The bleeding lady. Yeah, definitely the bleeding lady. Girls? Can that include raising someone from the dead? Definitely, yeah. Well, there's two. Which one? Lazarus. Okay, three, sorry. Yeah, Lazarus. I was thinking of the widow's son. Yep, perfect. And someone else? The daughter. Jairus' daughter, yep. And then we read in the 11th hour gospel. Peter's wife's mother was sick with a high fever, and they made request of him concerning her. So there's miracle after miracle of healing after healing. So we come to this healing miracle, and we're like, yep, and again. But I think sometimes, and I could just be talking about myself here. We see it so often, and we think, oh, that's a nice story. I've read this before, and we move on. But we think, why don't I think that if Jesus healed this person and healed all these people, that he can heal me? Sometimes I may feel that this story belongs in the gospel 2,000 years ago, when Jesus was on earth. But yeah, that's just narrative now, and it doesn't apply to me. But that's certainly not the case. I might not be blind, I might not be paralyzed in all the literal senses, but I definitely have requests from God. I make requests from God every day. And if I don't, I should, because it's a valuable resource available to me at my fingertips. Or if I do, sometimes I might feel that it falls on deaf ears. I don't know, am I alone in that? Maybe I am. But what I want to say is that all these crazy miracles that we see are not a distant story, are not a distant past, that are completely unrelated to me. I should read these stories and I say, that guy, his servant was dying sick and he was healed. Simon's wife's mother was sick and she was healed. Lazarus, Jairus' daughter, the widow's son were literally dead and they were raised. So is it impossible to happen now? And that's a question I really have to ask myself. And none of these things specifically apply to me, but I definitely have things that I want from God. And if God did these incredible miracles, can he do that to me? And that's what we want to what we want to consider today, and think about, why did God answer those prayers? And so perhaps we're talking today about those prayers. And you know what? Actually, not only in the Gospels, but even in the Gospels, we didn't talk about the lepers. And then in the book of Acts, the apostles kept going, even because you might say, because Jesus was here on earth in the flesh. He was incarnated in the flesh. But even after he ascended to heaven, we had the apostles in the book of Acts, correct? Their shadows would heal people, or their handkerchiefs would heal people, or they'd ask for money and they'd say, "Silver and gold I do not have, but by the word of God, rise up, take up your bed and walk." Right? So to say that because it was in the gospel and Jesus was there himself in the flesh, is not a good enough excuse, because that wasn't the case in the book of Acts, and we know that after that the Holy Spirit descended upon us. And when we say the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen, and particularly in our Orthodox faith, the Holy Spirit is not less than, the third person of the Trinity is not any less than the second or the first. So, as a matter of fact, we have the Holy Spirit, we have God Himself, so much more accessible to us than back then. And so, in all of these situations, there is someone who gives and someone who takes. Consider it like a transaction. The transaction is, let's say you go to the shops, there's some guy sitting on one side of the desk at the teller, at the cashier, and someone who's selling and someone who's buying. In all of these situations, there's Jesus, who is the giver, and someone who's receiving. Now, I think we can all agree that on one side, the giver, Jesus, is unchanged. He's constant. Is that fair to say? Okay, so some nods, it's fair to say that the giver is unchanged. If we agree and that all these healings and all these miracles happened and testified by yourselves, and we said both in the Gospels and after the ascension, when through the Acts of the Apostles, through the apostles themselves, if all these happen, then, and we're saying that Jesus is a constant, then what my part to play is the other side of that equation. If the giver is the constant, then the receiver is the variable. And so what I want us to do is to go through the story of, I want to go through the story of the centurion soldier and just determine together how the receiver can be different. Okay. And so as we said, these miracles happened. That's the first, let's say premise. That's the first thing. The second thing is that God is constant. And so the third thing is the variable. And the variable is the person asking. So what I want to do today is, when we start to read now the centurion soldier, with this brief introduction, is to look at what are the characteristics of this person, or this prayer, or this scenario that I can apply to myself and expect the same response, right? If I do the same thing over and over there again, it'd be silly to expect a different response. But if I do something different, I can expect something different in return. So if we could please open to Luke chapter 7, and if someone can read for us nice and clearly from verse 1 to 10. Do you want the mic?
Now when he concluded all his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. And a certain centurion's servant, who was dear to him, was sick and ready to die. So when he heard about Jesus, he sent elders of the Jews to him, pleading with him to come and heal his servant. And when they came to Jesus, they begged him earnestly, saying that the one for whom he should do this was deserving, for he loves our nation and has built us a synagogue. Then Jesus went with them, and when he was already not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to him, saying to him, Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof. Therefore I did not even think myself worthy to come to you, but say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man placed under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to one, Go, and he goes, and to another, Come, and he comes, and to my servant, Do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard these sayings, he marveled at him, and turned around and said to the crowd that followed him, I say to you, I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. And those who were sent, returning to the house, found the servant well who had been sick.
Thanks, Andrew. So, just to repeat that very last thing we were saying, we said that miracles happen, healing happen, and they happen by a giver and a receiver. The giver is always God, and the receiver is the variable. We said that Christ, God, is always constant. If he healed then, he can heal now. But the variable is the receiver, is the person asking. So really this is about answered prayers. As we said, I'm not asking, I'm not paralyzed, I'm not blind, I'm not lame, I'm not a leper in all those literal senses, but I'm definitely asking God for something. And so what I want to focus on today, or what I want us to extrapolate out of this reading, out of this story, is answered prayers. How can I get an answered prayer? I'm asking something too. So, and that's what I want us together to analyze. So before we dig into it, maybe we could just have some suggestions. What did we see out of this centurion soldier that could have evoked this response or moved Christ to do this healing miracle? Phil, because you're sitting the furthest away, what characteristics can we see that that I can take away from this centurion soldier for an answered prayer?
Even though he had so much authority and power, he was used to just telling people to get things for him, but he still put away all his power and trusted in his own God.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And he also sent out a delegation. Yeah. Okay. Somebody else. Mary? Yeah, okay. Anybody else want a last taker? Okay, let's dive in together. And so the beauty about again, what we want to take out of this is the characteristics or the qualities of an answered prayer. The first thing is that it says, and a certain centurion's servant who was dear to him was sick and ready to die. I just want to jump on to what Phil was saying and take off from there. And he says, Phil was saying that this is a guy in high power, and he cared about, but he also had a delegation. He could send people out, and so he did. But he had, sorry, and it says here, a servant who was dear to him. First of all, he had love towards other people. Just because he was in high power, he didn't say, no, look, he's just a servant. I've got many people under my control. He's disposable, he's expendable. No, he had love for him. And the first argument I want to make, and feel free to rebuttal, the first argument that I want to make is the reason this guy had his answered prayer is because he had peace with other people and he had peace with God. If I go this evening and I go and I pray in front of the icon of Jesus in my room and I go down my knees and I ask him for something, first of all, do I have peace with God? Think about it like a real thing. Like if I want to go and I want to ask a favor of somebody, first of all, am I at peace with you? Am I at peace with other people as well? Do I have the audacity to come and ask you if I'm not even at peace with you? Like, can I be just having this big argument with Joe and then, it's, okay, by the way, can you take me home? Like, it doesn't really make sense. First of all, I have to be at peace with God and at peace with people. He was definitely at peace with people. He loved everybody because he loved his servant. He says, a servant who was dear to him. And I have to be at peace with God as well. In the verse it says, leave your gift there before the altar and go your way. First, be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gifts. If I have anything, if I want to ask God for anything, first of all, I have to have peace with the people around me. I have to have peace with my brothers and sisters. I can't be quarreling with people and fighting with people. And then in my filth, I go and stand before God and say, puppy dog eyes, and say, God, can I please have this, or can I please do this? And it's a bit of hypocrisy. So I have to have peace with people around me. Psalm 91, it says, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall hide under the shadow of the Almighty. The way I see hiding under the shadow of the Almighty is like, being under an umbrella. It's pouring, it's raining, but I've got an umbrella. And I've got one of those good ones, the ones from Bunnings that are big and strong enough. I can hide under the shadow of the Almighty. And he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall hide under the shadow of the Almighty. So I have to be at peace with God, and I have to be under his wing for me to have my prayers answered. Now, and I'm saying that, meaning to say that I can't have hatred in my heart, animosity in my heart, and go to God and say, God, I really, I want something. It doesn't make sense. Think of a child going to ask his parents something, or think of you going to ask your parents something. It's not the right time if I told you to stop, it's not time to wear your colourful socks, and you're arguing with me, and then you say, oh, can I please? I have to be at peace with God and peace with others before I go and ask something. The Russian bishop that says, when I have strife with people, when I have animosity with someone, it says, they have harmed their neighbour and trampled on the holy divine law. They have angered God, the great and awesome Creator. And this is in a book we read together. And if I'm arguing with someone and I'm fighting with someone and I have animosity with someone, I have angered God. Again, he says, this person, he's harmed his neighbour and trampled on the holy divine law. He has angered God, the great and awesome Creator. How can I go to the awesome Creator? How can I go to this guy and to this Creator and say, oh, can you please raise my servant? Can you please heal my servant? Can you please raise my daughter? Can you please, heal me of my sickness, of my illness, of my leprosy, if I have angered God? So, what the point I'm trying to make here is, first of all, the centurion, he had peace with God and he had peace with his neighbor. He had peace with everyone around him, for him to go and to ask God something. I hope I have, without labouring this point too much, I hope I have made a strong enough argument that for me to have a prayer answered, I have to be at peace with God. The second thing is that it says he asked them to plead with him and beg him earnestly. That's exactly what he did. He said to him, his verse 3, he said, so he heard about Jesus. He sent elders of the Jews to him, pleading with him to come and heal his servant. So that's the instructions he gave. And when they came to Jesus, they begged him earnestly. They carried out the instruction to the T. He said, go and plead with him. And when they went to him, he begged him. It's okay for me to beg God. It's okay for me to ask more than once. Because, and I say this because sometimes it's like, God's not answering my prayer. I've already asked 6 times. And I feel like we ask with entitlement. We say like, come on, I've said it once, I've said it twice. Why is it not coming? Sometimes we treat God like the vending machine. We expect that out of a vending machine, especially like the one here. You put $2 and you say, why isn't my lollies coming out? And sometimes it doesn't come out, and I feel like I deserve it because I should, because that's a vending machine. But God's not a vending machine. So they begged and they pleaded with him, and so I should too. First, I have to have peace with God so I can have the audacity to stand before him. So I don't go anger him and then I go in front of him. No, I have to have peace with God, and then I have to go and I have to beg and I have to plead. And in Psalm 130 it says, let your ears be attentive to the voice of my supplications. So it's okay, for me to ask more than once and to the voice of my supplications. And it says in the same verses, my soul waits for the Lord more than those who watch for the morning. Yes, more than those who watch for the morning. So I have to beg, I have to plead, I have to wait eagerly. God responds. He responds to brokenheartedness, and we see that time and time again. What happened with Jairus' daughter? It says he fell down to Jesus' feet and he begged him. So that's another example where Christ answered his prayers, and that's exactly what this centurion soldier did. He sent his delegation to go to Jesus, to plead with him and to beg him, and that's exactly what happened. And if I think that's too much, then I'm probably a little bit arrogant. Then I'm probably like, well, why do I have to beg? Why do I have to beg? Because he's God and he owes me nothing. He's all the way up there and I'm really down here. So what if I really want something and he owes me nothing, then I should plead to God, just like the psalmist David did. So first we said peace with God and others. Second we said plead with him and beg him earnestly. And the second and the third argument I want to present in asking for an answered prayer is, when he said to him, Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof. Therefore, I did not even think myself worthy to come to you. The first time you read this, how when you're halfway through the passage, you think to yourself, he didn't come because he's a centurion soldier and he's got servants. He's like, yeah, mate, you go, and come back and report back to me. But that's not why he did it. The reason he did it is because he said, therefore, I did not even think myself worthy to come to you. And that's the same prayer that we say before we approach communion. Sometimes I approach communion, again, without thinking twice. But, this exact story tells me when I pray the prayer before communion says, Lord, I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the words, your sins are forgiven, and my soul will be healed. And sorry, just actually something I missed on the previous point about pleading. Because it was mentioned in the workshop. It's okay for me to plead and to beg, and then maybe my prayer's not answered. And one example that we mentioned in the workshop was St. Paul, when he had a thorn in his side. He pleaded, but the response was, my grace is made perfect, what's the verse? Is made perfect, sufficient in weakness. And so Christ, he refused. He said, no, it's better for you to have this tribulation. It's better for you to have it. So I can plead. Christ, just because I have suffering, it doesn't mean just because Christ didn't answer my request or didn't grant me that healing, doesn't mean that he's not with me. Coming back to a point on therefore I do not even think myself worthy to come to you, is to approach God with a humble attitude. I have to come to him without entitlement, saying, please God, brokenhearted, and we see this a humble, We see humility here on multiple levels. Of course, we see the humility from the centurion that he went, humility towards God. Humility, he said, I'm not worthy to come to you, thus I sent a delegation. The second time we see humility is he was humble even clearly towards his servant. He cared about his servant. He didn't say, you're a servant, be done with you. If you're sick, you die. I've got hundreds others. He didn't. He was obviously humble with him. And so I have to approach God with humility and with brokenheartedness. The fourth thing is, and the biggest thing is faith. 100% it's faith. He said to him, but say the words and my soul will be healed. It's enough. Like he believed that if all you do is just say the words, my soul will be healed. Does that make sense? And that is the biggest thing here, and it is faith. Now, I think we say faith too easily because it's hard to define. And I put my hand up first and I say, without doing a little preparation, if I was asked what is faith, it's hard to define. Does anyone have a go or give us an example or tell us what faith is? Chris?
What I'm not sure, but I'll guess is believing in something you cannot fully believe, like it's not really in front of you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. And I feel like the easiest way to describe faith, other than such a good definition by Chris, is also to see examples of faith. But faith is described to us in Hebrews, and it says, this is quoting Hebrews chapter 11, which is a full chapter about faith. And St. Paul says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Said almost perfectly by Chris. Second best to St. Paul himself. He says, so what is faith? The substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And so this centurion soldier had perfect faith. The exact definition of faith, as described in Hebrews, is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So he basically, there's no evidence to prove that Jesus was going to heal the centurion soldiers even from a mile away. But he, in his heart, he believed that exactly was going to happen without the evidence for it. And so the faith that Noah had, you think of Noah, he had faith because he probably looked foolish building this massive ark in the middle of nowhere for years and years and years while expecting rain that's never happened before. That's faith. Or Abraham sacrificing Isaac. He had faith that he was going to have descendants, thousands and thousands of descendants, numerous that you can't even count, through the one son that finally came, and now he's been asked to kill him. And he had faith that I'm going to kill him, I'm still going to have descendants that outnumber the stars and the sands of the sea. And that is faith. And this centurion soldier had faith. When I ask God, when I go and I plead and I make a request to God for something, do I have faith? Do I have faith that he's going to respond to me? And sometimes I might be asking something so narrow like, God, please give me this one particular thing. But I have to have faith that God is going to be with me, like we discussed again in the workshop, that even I can't be so narrow to think that God is only with me if he answers in a particular way. But the faith that God is with me irrespective of the outcome, and that this tribulation is, I can see God through this tribulation. That even if God doesn't answer my prayer, I have the faith that God is with me and he's hearing my prayers and he is happy, he is allowing this to happen. Because the overall goal for my life, the objective is salvation. And maybe him not healing my soldier, healing my servant, or him not answering my prayer is part of my path to salvation, is part of it. So maybe if he answers this one particular request, then it's not good for my salvation. And so he is with me. I have the faith that he is hearing me and he is answering me. And maybe we all have personal experiences where I've had a negative outcome through this journey, but through the journey I've seen God's work in my life. And so he didn't give me the outcome, but I'm happy that I didn't get the outcome because I've seen his hand working with me throughout this journey. And I don't know it until the very end. It's all revealed to me at the very end. And so, again, just for any latecomers, we're looking through the centurion soldier and we're saying, what are the characteristics of his prayer or of him that we can take into our lives and say, he had an answered prayer? What are the characteristics? And the first one we said was peace with God and peace with others. I can't dare go and stand before God if I don't have peace with God and I don't have peace with others. If I don't have peace with God, then how do I have the audacity to go and ask and request something? If I don't have peace with others, well, as the verse says, leave your gift at the altar, go make peace with your brother, and then come back and talk to me. So the first one was peace with God and peace with others. The second one was plead and beg. It's okay to plead and beg. The third thing we said was to ask with humility, to approach God with humility, and so did he. He approached God with humility as he said, Lord, do not trouble yourself. I didn't even think myself worthy to come to you myself. He was extremely humble, and he said he also was clearly humble with his fellow people, with his servants. The fourth thing we said was faith. So that I have to have faith that when I ask, that I'm not just speaking and throwing words in the atmosphere, but I have faith that I'm speaking to God and he is with me. And the beauty, when I feel that, or when I see that God has responded to me, or that I feel that God is looking down at me and caring for the finest, most insignificant thing in my life, I say, God, you even care about these tiny things? It tells me that God is with me. It's reassurance. And it says that I'm okay to tackle any trouble because whatever the outcome is going to be, I feel that God is with me. And I have to have the faith, just like the centurion soldier. He had faith. He said, just say the words and he'll be healed. You don't have to come all the way. And the last thing is, or the fifth thing is, what am I asking for? What is it that I'm asking for? What was the centurion asking for? What did he ask for? I know it sounds like a simple question, but just entertain my silliness. What did he ask for? What was his request? Exactly. It was for his servant to be healed. He wasn't asking and, I'm just going to tear a page out of my kid's book. He wasn't saying, oh, no, the lollipop I got was purple and it wasn't pink. He wasn't asking for something silly. He wasn't even asking for himself. It was very selfless. It was very, very selfless. He did all of this, and he humbled himself, and he begged, and it wasn't even for himself. Now, does that mean I can't ask for myself? No, of course I can. But the point is that his request was something it was something edifying. It doesn't mean I can't ask God, or I shouldn't ask God for the tiniest details of my life, but I have to understand that God will respond to me if this is edifying for my life, if this is something that is for my good. Sometimes I ask for things that is better for me not having. And so he asked for the healing of his servant. It wasn't even for himself. It wasn't even for himself, which also tells us something else. So I might add point number 6, which is intercessions. When I pray, when I ask, do I use the power of intercessions? Of course, this is something very orthodox, and we don't really see in other denominations. But if you look around, in our church is filled with saints pictures on the walls. It's not for decoration. Why was this power of intercessions? Because the giver, we said, was at the start we had an equation. We said that there's a giver and there's a receiver. And we said that the giver was Christ. We said that was Jesus. He was the giver. And we said that the receiver was a centurion because his prayer was answered. Although that be it true, allow me to just change it a little bit. The giver was Jesus. The receiver wasn't a centurion. His prayer was answered, but the real receiver, as Mina said, was the servant. The servant is the one who was healed. And it happened through the pleadings of the centurion soldier. And what I want to add here is the power of intercessions. Do I use the saints to intercede on my behalf? Or, as is the example in this story here, do I even use my friends to intercede on my behalf? Why not? That's exactly what happened here. God listens to our prayers and listens to the intercessions of prayers. There's a saint that I didn't know about. Maybe this is another unsung hero while on the series. And his name is, in Arabic, is Shahid Bishoy, or the Martyr Bishoy. And he passed away in 2017 in Egypt, in Tanta, with the Palm Sunday bombings. And can you imagine, like, if we're a group of friends here and we see each other every single Friday night and probably Sunday and probably other days of the week, and if we're a really tight-knit group of friends, and then all of a sudden one of us dies and goes to heaven. Just because I was friends with you yesterday while you were alive and now you're dead doesn't mean that I'm not still friends with you, because really the term dead is invalid. We don't believe in being dead, but we believe in passing over into life in heaven. And if I believe in the resurrection of the dead, then you're not really dead, you're just in a more elevated place. And just because I used to talk to Andrew, and God forbid, but just because I used to talk to Andrew in the flesh, when he's not in the flesh, doesn't mean I can't still talk to him. And so the intercession, so the intercession of the saints is something very valuable to us. And so my point is about Marty Bishoy is that, and I heard about him recently from someone who's passed away now as well. He used to go to that church. And so, like hundreds of people, and because I heard this story, I watch a lot of YouTube videos about him. A lot of people used to go to that church. Then after that bombing, everyone had problems, everyone had health problems or whatnot, and so they would talk to their friend. They'll say, Bishoy, come on, Bishoy, now that you're a martyr, you died a martyr, and now that you're in heaven, because they know this guy is definitely a saint, he died a martyr. That's like, that's a free ticket. So like, we know you're a saint, we know you're a martyr, you're our mate. We used to sing choir together, we used to serve Sunday school together. Don't leave me now. I'm sick, and the common phrase between all of them is that you're a medical student. We know, you're a medical, like, you're a doctor. Heal me. And then the stories that would flooded. There's so many healing miracles. Actually, exactly what we're talking about. Like we said at the very start, these healing miracles don't start and end in the Bible, but they happen till today. And I encourage you to just search Marty Bashaw on YouTube, and there's like dozens of stories. And they're actually professionally made documentaries, because normally we hear of saints like Saint George so long ago, and the saint movies are really old school, but nowadays it's like really professional. And so, sorry, I sidetracked, but the point I'm trying to say is the power of intercessions. This centurion soldier was simply an intercessor for the servant who was healed, and I have the power of intercessions. Even someone from our church, witnessed to the fact that this Marty Bashoy did a healing miracle for him. And I'm talking like a medical healing miracle, where it's like medical tests data that you can see here one day, and on the other day the reports are completely different and contrasting. And so the power of intercessions. I intercede through the saints, and I can also use my friends to intercede. I pray for them and they pray for me. If I'm only a friend socially, well then I'm not really a true friend if I'm not supporting my friends in a spiritual sense as well. And so we also know that, I know that the whole focus has been on the centurion soldier, right? We said he's the main character here, even though the real recipient, the recipient of the healing miracle was the servant. But the servant as well, let's not overlook him. He was worthy of the healing, because it says, that was the argument that the centurion made. What did the centurion say? He said to him, Say that the one whom he should do this was deserving, quote, for he loves our nation and has built us a synagogue. Means, his good deeds. I should also have good deeds. Like I should be living a good life. If I obey the commandments, and then I'm living under the protection of God. If things go wrong, well, you know what? It's like insurance. I had, because I recently had a little car accident, so let's talk about insurance, right? If I'm doing everything right, I'm covered by an insurance policy. I don't care what happens. I'm covered by an insurance policy, so it doesn't matter. But if I void my insurance, if I step outside the boundaries of my insurance policy, for example, I don't pay my premium, or I'm drink driving, or my license is suspended, or any of those things, don't expect to be covered by an insurance policy, right? But if I do good deeds and I live a righteous life, I'm at peace with God, I'm at peace with others, well then I'm covered by an insurance policy. Even if there are trials and tribulations in my life, it's okay. Again, God can be with me through that, and maybe through that tribulation I'm going to experience God. And when I experience God, then it makes the trial look so small and so insignificant. And as a matter of fact, I will be joyous in my trial, because no longer do I care about this trial. It's like, give me more. If it means that I taste the presence of God, then come at me. I'm happy, because I'm going to taste and experience God through this trial. Does that make sense? And so, in summary, the whole point of this is, it's a lovely story. The centurion soldier who sent out a delegation to meet Jesus to heal his servant. But what does it mean to me today? First of all, is that there was healing, there's healing now. Now, I might not be paralyzed or sick, but I have prayers that I want answered. If there's prayers were answered then, prayers are answered today. Now, I didn't really mean to make the link, but yes, through the examples of that, Marty Bashoy, the 2017 Marty, who's literally healing people miraculously today. But I don't want to speak abstract, because maybe some of us want physical healing, but all of us want answered prayers. If there's answered prayers there, then there's answered prayers today. And the point of this is to analyze the centurion soldier and to see what are the characteristics to achieve an answered prayer. And I just want to run through those very quickly, just as a summary. And if anyone has anything to add, please feel free to do so. In summary, the centurion soldier, for an answered prayer, and as we see in the example of the centurion soldier, in summary, he was at peace with God and peace with others. I have to be at peace with God and at peace with others for me to go stand before God. I can't go stand before God if I have sin in my life, and I don't mean I've committed one sin, so that's it, don't dare pray. But if I'm living a sinful life, if I'm living if I'm consciously living a sinful life and I'm not repentant and I have no intention to change and I'm not even, I'm not even struggling against the sin, well then, that is separation between me and God. That is conscious separation between me and God. How can I then off the cuff say, hey God, can you please, do this for me? I have to be at peace with God. Being at peace with God means also being at peace with others. If I have animosity with anyone, clear that away. If I have separation with God, clear that away. First condition we see in the centurion soldier is to be at peace with God and peace with others. The second was humility, was to approach with humility. And we see his humility. He said, that's why I sent a delegation, because I'm not worthy to come to you. To approach God humbly. To approach God, it's okay to have a broken heart. Don't ask with any kind of entitlement. We said pleading as a separate point, but I'll just put it under humility here for now. So, part of being humble is to beg, is to plead. And you know what begging means? We probably don't beg because, and definitely in a worldly sense in society, I don't beg anyone because it's like, why would I beg, right? But with God, I should beg because I am talking, the reason I don't beg someone is because who are you for me to beg? But you know what? You know who God is? That's God. Maybe I should beg. Comes under humility. So peace with God, peace with others. Second thing was humility. Third thing was faithfulness, that I ask with expectation, not entitlement, but believing that God can do this. Fourth thing was his selflessness, which means I make sure that what I'm asking is edifying. Maybe I should start asking things for other people. That is a demonstration of selflessness. But also, it's okay to ask for myself, but make sure that what I'm asking is edifying. It's not just that I want a Ferrari, but something, edifying. And lastly, intercessions, the power of intercessions. And so we see all those characteristics in the centurion soldier, having peace with God, having humility, faithfulness, selflessness, and intercessions. And maybe if I tick all of these things, I should expect the same thing like the centurion soldier. We said that God is a constant. He healed then and he heals now. The only thing that is different is the recipient. How do I approach God? And that's what I can take out of the centurion soldier. And glory be to God forever. Amen. If anyone has anything to add, please feel free. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much, Muna, for that insightful analysis on the centurion officer and how we can approach God and aim to have our prayers answered. And thank you guys for coming. We're going to we have some announcements, so let me pull that up. And then it's going to be about the Egypt trip and one more thing that we've got.
So maybe I'll just say the Egypt trip.
Yes.
So we've given a summary of the Egypt trip already and what's involved. It's an awesome trip. I don't want to bore you guys by. It is an awesome trip, but I guess the message is this streamed as well.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Basically, all I want to say is, please, if you have any intention of going, please make it loud and clear today. Come, let me know. So because